Well, welcome to our next Ask Me Anything session. And this week we are interviewing Ed Maughan. And Ed is the marketing and product director of an organization called groupaccommodation.com. And for those of you who don't know anything about groupaccommodation.com, they've actually been around a long time. They launched 18 years ago, and it was to fill a gap in the market, particularly because the founder of the business, James Maughan, was frustrated with the lack of specialist platforms to market his own 20-bedroom bunkhouse, not to mention himself, but also to other people who are facing a similar kind of problem. He knew that there was something that had to be solved here. And so, of course, he launched groupaccommodation.com. Fast forward to today, it's a property listing site that specializes in properties that sleep 10 plus people. And they have everything from cottages to castles, bunkhouses to villas, operating mainly in the UK and Europe. It's a commission-free structure, so property owners don't pay per booking. That allows them to manage the booking directly with their guests. And it's a simple annual subscription service. So Ed, welcome.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks for the great intro. Great to be here.
Yeah, no worries at all. Let's crack on because we've got lots of questions that have come in, and I want to get through those as quickly as we can to answer them all. So the first one, what are the most common challenges for large group hosts that you find yourselves assisting with?
Yeah, it's a super interesting question, that one, and it really does vary property to property for us. And that's kind of at the heart of why we kind of operate in the way that we do. So we allow owners to connect direct with their guests. So we're not an agency model. All the bookings go direct to owners. And often when you have these large groups, they are looking for something quite bespoke. So I think communication is the biggest challenge, making sure that everyone's on the same page, making sure that the property is suitable for 10 plus people. We do deal with properties all the way up to the kind of 50, 60, even 100 person size. So it's just facilitating that communication and making sure that everyone's on the same page when they're making that kind of booking.
And I suppose your model of allowing your customers to be direct with their guest is deliberate in that respect, that they can have that ongoing dialogue before the guest books, and the guest equally can ask those questions that are important when you have a really big house.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when you're making a booking for that many people, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders to make sure that everyone's getting the experience they're looking for, I guess. And likewise for the property owner, they really want to kind of scope up a little bit who's coming to stay at their property and make sure that they're going to be respectful of the property and everyone gets a good experience. So there's a lot of sizing up that needs to happen on both sides, I suppose.
Yeah. I might actually go to our last question next because it talks to that point. I mean, have you got any tips for managing the expectations or expected behaviors of hen stag groups, those problem kind of groups?
So this one comes up quite a lot for us. So we ran a bunkhouse in the Brecon Beacons as I was growing up, and we definitely saw the best and the worst of the stag and hen market. I think that for the most part, it's just making sure you have those rules up front and making sure you're clear with everyone. If you don't want stags and hens, it's better to just say that. I think we definitely encourage people that don't want those types of groups to be clear about that up front. And then when you are taking stag and hen groups, I think it's all about communication. So picking up the phone, having a chat, trying to understand a little bit more about what they're looking to do, whether they're on site. If they're looking to do a walking tour or something like that, then you might be looking to have a better experience than someone who's maybe booked a sound system and there might be a rave about to happen on your property. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely about having those conversations up front. For the most part, we find that most groups are very respectful. And if you have real concerns, it's always worth taking a damage deposit up front, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's a point really well made that you should explicitly state, I mean, I would imagine most people don't want the hen and the stag do's, the hassle of it, but I should imagine there are also lots of hen and stag do's that are actually really well behaved, to your point. And so it's like being upfront and clear in your expectations. Either you want them or you don't. And if you do want them, then you get into a dialogue. I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think you can. A phone conversation is a very good way to sniff out anything that may be a little bit unlike what you would like it to happen in your house. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Let's move on. The next question was, what can I do to fill more midweek availability? And I'm assuming that question was asked because a lot of these kind of big group things happen over long weekends.
Yeah, it is. So often we get kind of multi-generation family holidays, kind of landmark birthdays, weddings, stags, hens, as we kind of covered. One of the things we encourage our owners to do is to look outside of that core market. So very often things like corporate retreats, team building events and things like that can be a great way to fill up that midweek availability. And especially with the new world of everyone working remote, a lot of companies are looking to kind of do offsites and get people together during the week every now and then. So that can be a really interesting one to fill some of those midweek gaps. I think another one is just looking at the tools at your disposal. Social media is a good way to plug any kind of last minute deals you've got to your existing audience. And then lots of sites, including ours, have a late availability section. So just making sure your availability is kind of up to date across all of those tools as well.
Yeah, cool. I hadn't really thought about it in terms of corporate retreats, but that seems like a really, really obvious gap in the market when people are looking for something a little bit more original than a large meeting room in a hotel for a couple of nights.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting one, and those can be so soulless. Those kind of big hotel retreats. So actually getting together on a big property that will probably do you a great deal midweek is a really nice way to get the team together.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, good. Next question. Are catering or private chef upsells worth it? And I think the point there is the time spent in finding them versus the margin you might get from doing them.
Yeah, I'd say definitely for the bigger properties. Again, when you're taking a big group of friends or family away, no one wants to be stuck in the kitchen for the whole of the event cooking for everyone. So while it is a bit of upfront effort, making sure that you've got a trusted partner who can come in and deal with the cooking at your property. I think once you put the effort in up front and they get to know your property and they get to know your kitchen, then it can be a really great experience for the guests. That said, finding the right caterer, obviously not the easiest, but I do think it's kind of worth putting in the graft and trying to find someone for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right. Next up is a question about pets. So the question is, I'm finding groups that bring dogs don't take such good care of my place. So are there any tips you have for encouraging greater respect of the property and furnishings?
Yeah, we tend to encourage charging for dogs, maybe not as much as you charge for a person, but just having either some kind of deposit or an upfront fee for each dog that comes along, just to get people to really think about what they're doing. People often don't consider your property in the same way that they might their own, and then when they're having to pay for it, they may think about that. I think the other thing we encourage with the bigger properties is having a great utility room or facilities for dogs, both to sleep in and for cleaning off muddy dogs if you've been out walking, because if people don't have the facilities to clean the dogs up, then yeah, they might create chaos on your soft furnishings. So I think it's just about being prepared if you do offer that option.
Yeah, and the charging of the fees, I hadn't really thought about that, but is that something you? Sorry, this was not a question that I was thinking I'd ask you, but I'm thinking about that that people might ask. Well, how do I charge for dogs? How do I, is that a real thing? Should I? Is that expected by a guest?
I think, well, I mean, we certainly did it at our bunkhouse, and it doesn't need to be a huge amount. It could just be £25 a dog, for instance, which might cover the extra half hour your cleaner needs to spend cleaning kind of nose prints off windows and doing a bit of extra hoovering. But I think it's just making people aware that it doesn't cost nothing for the property to host a dog, and there's certainly additional cleaning costs that are likely to be incurred.
Yeah, cool. All right. Let's go to the next question. And this is about upsells. So I think the context here is that there's a certain amount of money you can make from renting out your home, but what else can you earn? So the question is, what are the extras most bought by large group guests?
So we've touched on caterers already. I think that's a big one for big groups. Even if it's just someone dropping off some pre-prepared meals, I think people really like to not have to think about the cooking when they're away with friends and family. So I think that's a great one if you can find someone to do that, or even if it's possible for you to kind of cook some lasagnas yourself and to kind of leave behind for them to prepare. Mm-hmm. We also obviously see a lot of family celebrations, things like hen do's, love cocktail making classes or wine tasting, stag groups, things like archery and those kind of more adventure-based activities. Another big one we're seeing is the kind of cork and canvas idea, where someone comes and does a wine tasting and then you'll also do an art class at the same time. And typically people's art gets a bit worse after a few glasses of wine, so it can be quite a fun experience.
Definitely. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that in terms of it not being like your conventional extras that you might sell, but more experience extras in the spirit of what that group is coming to do. Yeah, and I think that's cool. I remember when we went to myself and a lot of uni friends. We've all now got families, and think we're up to about sort of 35 or 40 people with kids. And so we've been at big houses over many years. And I remember one of the time we did one of those murder evenings where you all like take on a character. So I think we were all like given, American actors to try, and we had to walk around like for hours talking in an American accent trying to deduce who the killer was. It is good fun, and it's like what you can do in a big house, isn't it? I mean, there's exactly more potential. Yeah,
I think that's the thing. If you're paying a fair bit of money to stay in a big house for a weekend, you really would quite like to stay on site and soak up the environment and have people come to you. So I think those can be great things to offer.
Totally. Okay. Next question. What property amenities are most commonly searched for or asked for by guests?
So hot tubs probably comes up every time you ask this question, but everyone's looking for hot tubs, and we certainly see that in our search data on the site. The other big one for big groups is dining facilities, which might be a little bit less expected for a smaller property, but when people are coming away with 30, 40, 50 friends, they want to make sure they can all sit around the same table and share a meal as well. So yeah, having some great pictures of the property, the dining table laid up, so they can kind of pitch themselves around the table is a good one for the kind of bigger properties too.
Yeah, I can 100% relate to that in the context of my experience staying in big houses. It was always like the big table, which was the focal point. Everyone ended up there.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely. I wonder about games as well. People coming with kids, maybe it's a pool table or table tennis or whatever.
Yeah, people love those, and especially a games room where you can throw the kids in and maybe lock the door behind you so
exactly.
they can entertain themselves. So yeah, games rooms are a great one as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of hot tubs, actually, the next question says, should I be charging for the use of the hot tub, or is it an expected inclusion?
I don't know whether it should be an added cost on top of what you would be charging otherwise, but I think certainly and I've seen some data kicking about the last few weeks, that properties that do have hot tubs charge quite a bit more. So I think people are willing to pay for the luxury, but maybe not on top of what they would be paying anyway. But so many properties are adding hot tubs these days, it's almost becoming table stakes, it seems.
Yeah, it's a good point actually to embed it in the price. Because I think we're all as guests willing to pay the price that's stated if we feel like it's decent value, rather than then being dinged later for here's my hot tub fee, £100 to that's just a bit tedious and a bit annoying, frankly. So yeah, I agree with that.
Sorry,
no, go for it.
No, I was just going to no one really likes those surprises, and I think we find, because bigger properties tend to be quite a lot up front until you split it down by head, people can be surprised by how much a big house costs. So yeah, having added extras can be a little bit daunting, I think. So
yeah, cool. Next question. Ought I to include photos of every bedroom and every room in the house on my listing? So I think that's basically the question is, do I show everybody everything in the house?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're happy with everything in the house, I'd say the more pictures, the merrier, to be honest. And it kind of goes back to that point about the person organising the holiday having quite a lot of pressure on them to make sure everyone's happy, and especially with those multi-generation groups, you might want to make sure the room's accessible for granny or it's suitable for the kids. So I think if you can have a picture of every room in there, or even a floor plan, it really helps people to understand what the property is going to be like and make sure there's a suitable room for everyone.
Yeah, floor plan's a good call. I think that'd be really important. Like looking back on our experiences, if you know where everyone is in relation to each other.
Exactly.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, leading on a bit from, kind of showcasing the home through photos, someone's asked, I'm contemplating hiring a drone photographer to capture the grounds. Do you recommend this as a marketing tactic?
We would definitely recommend it. So we also deal with a lot of wedding venues. And I think the brides and grooms in particular like to scope out the grounds. They like to kind of understand how the property is going to work, maybe scope out some wedding photo spots. So I think it's a great idea for those types of properties. And yeah, I think it gives people an idea again of what they're coming to. I think the more you show people up front, the more excited they can get, and the more they kind of share it around with friends and family. So the more the merrier. Yeah,
and I'd say the flip of that as well, the more you manage expectations. There's no
exactly.
sort of Oh, I didn't realise that. Yeah.
I've definitely seen some very clever photography of houses that are right on the side of a motorway, for instance. And I think if you
that's tricky.
The opposite end of the spectrum, so you kind of need to manage people's expectations completely.
Yeah. All right. Grand. Final question. It looks like. Do you have oh no, we did that already. It was the hen and the stag groups. Yeah, we did that. I flipped to the last question first, didn't I? Great. Well, Ed, I think there were some really, really useful points there. And actually, I think a lot of the things that we've spoken about there aren't really the exclusive domain of big houses. You know, things like upselling, including amenities like hot tubs in your pricing, floor plans, drones, how to sell more midweek availability, upsell. I think it's pretty good stuff that appeals to other groups as well. Anything else that you want to add at this stage?
No, I think really the heart of all that is kind of getting into your customer's head and thinking about why they're coming away, and kind of trying to tailor the trip in such a way for them. Because I think the one thing that's unique to maybe bigger groups is just the stress of putting it all together. So the easier you can make their lives, the better. So yeah,
I second that. Great, Ed. Thanks for being really punchy and succinct with those answers. I think it's really helpful. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it, and we will hopefully be booking through you next time we organise a big university get together.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Ed.